says yes. Okay, because this is a very special art show. Of course, aren't all our art shows wonderful? They really are. And one thing that makes them so wonderful is because it's the artists live here. The artists are painting here, or they're painting in their rooms. Some artists are a little shy and they paint in their rooms. But hey, that's okay, right? You can paint wherever you want to paint. Just share your paintings with us, because it is a very wonderful part of our Kirby family. And I think today is going to be a very special day. And one reason is that I have invited someone to come. She doesn't have to come right now. But I've invited Marilyn Garziano to come because everybody knows and loves her, but she's so gifted that it's hard to express her talents and gifts in all the places that she is. Really, we just really appreciate it. And that she's embarrassed, but that's okay. She can live through that. But we've invited her because if we hear of her painting, but because she's into music so much, that all of her time is spread thinly. And so at this point, I just thought, well, fiddlesticks, if she's not painting, that's okay. But everybody knows she paints, and she has a love for children. And I thought it would be wonderful today to have her just come and be sort of our little spotlight today, though she doesn't like to be in the spotlight. But you know, I think I'm going okay. I started saying I'm going to have you come up now, but I'm not, because you're not in the row. I gotta keep the order. Wait a minute. Now I got the order. Okay. Anyway, this is a special time. There's another special thing that, where is Bobby? There's Bobby. Bobby, come up here for just a minute. We don't have a slide of this, but Bobby made a special friendship. Bobby made a special friendship with Helen Gaines. And you must say a word about your friendship, if you would.
When I came here,
Oh, yeah.
okay, when I first came here about 5 years ago, I was painting at home, and I had a good many paints, and I talked to Helen about maybe I could donate them to the art department. I thought with all the activities here, I wouldn't have time to paint. And she told me just go ahead and keep them and just give it a try. And so I did. And we became friends during the last 5 years and talked a lot. She was a retired railroad employee. I was too. And so somehow or other we talked occasionally. That's about all I have now.
Is that about all you had to
That's
say?
all I told you to be very short.
Okay, yeah, all right. Okay, just hold your finger. Give her the speaker. One thing I like about this group, because y'all are a family, we can stumble around and not know quite what we are doing. But hey, we're family, right?
Amen.
Since we're on Helen Gaines and what she contributed to our art department, and we're very grateful for what she has added through the years. And of course, she has died and is no longer with us, but was definitely a part of the art department. And I want to move over here and show you something else that is very special to me. This is a painting by Dorsey Faulkner. Ooh, excuse me. Dorsey is no longer with us, but she was very much a part of our art department. Dorsey had experienced a tremendous head injury due to an accident, and she was in Job's Way, And I got to talking to her family, and they said, well, you paint, maybe Mom would like to do that. Well, Mom came, and she came to the art department. She was in Job's Way. She came to the art department, and I asked her what colors she liked. Well, she didn't know colors. So I laid out the paints, and I said, now, let's point to the paint you like. She loved blue, yellow, and green, and most of her paintings were in blue, yellow, and green. But she did not know how to paint. She had never painted. So I loaded up a brush, squirted out all the paint, loaded up the brush, and she took that brush and she went up, down, from the top to the bottom, top to the bottom, top to the bottom. Every painting that she did was done this way, in the colors that she pointed to. But it was a beautiful experience because it brought joy to her, though she didn't know how to express it. It was just a beautiful thing, and it enriched my life tremendously because she came to the art department to paint. And the point of my story is, no one paints the same. She painted in stripes. I even controlled it once to turn it this way. And then we had stripes going this way. But the main thing is that she gave her all in her painting. And that's what we do here. None of us are really all that great. We're not going to go down in history, but we love what we do, and it's enjoyable. So people that are new, have not experienced this, I encourage you to come to the art department and look at this up close. Okay, now we're going to start with the real show. This is the she shows at the end of the show. But today I've asked her to come and begin our show because this is to die for right here. I love it. I love it.
Okay. My name is Suzanne Huffnagel. Most of you know who I am. And today and for the art wall, I'm presenting this quilt, which I named Bright Colors of Winter. Now, the original pattern is called 4x4. And I thought that sounded a little bland, so I just decided to give it my own interpretation. All of the colored parts in the white were scraps that I had. So this winter day, February 11th, 2021, we had a snow incident like we did a few weeks ago. So I thought, I want to do something, get something started. It's COVID, there's not much going on, just making masks or whatever we were doing back then. So I decided to get out all my bright colors, and I began making this quilt. And you notice there's a lot of white in here too, so I decided to count how many 2.5 or 4.5 inch squares are there in this quilt. There's 738 squares.
Wow.
Now, people will often ask me, well, how long does it take you to make a quilt? Well, that all depends. Most of the time, I don't keep track because I'm not just sitting there 8 hours a day, doing the same thing. So I started this quilt on February the 11th, and I did make a note that 9 days later, I had all of what is called well, now I forgot what it's called. Anyway, the white and the colored parts, I had that complete in 9 days. 9 days, yeah. So let me tell you, it's not as hard as it looks. You're not putting 2.5 inch square together with the 2.5 inch square. We can have a little consultation if you really want to know how that's done. But anyway, there's over 700 squares in this top, that's what it's called, the top of the quilt. And so the colored squares were fabric I had already paid for, so I don't really know how much that cost. But the additional fabric, the whites and the green, the little border of the black and whites polka dot, which ladies, polka dots are in for spring, I found that out. And the backing was an additional $100 for that fabric. Then to have it long-armed was $106.
Explain long-armed.
Long arm is where I take the quilt, the backing she provides, or I pay her for the batting, which is what's in the middle, and then the outside, the top, which I have made, and she sews by a computer machine called a long arm, and the reason it's called a long arm is because it is very long. And if your parents or grandparents did quilting back in the olden days, let's say, they would have something in their room or their dining room or wherever where several ladies would get together and quilt. And it's the same idea, only now it's mechanized and computerized and costs a lot of money. And you have to have a very large room to put it in if you're going to be in the long arm business. So I have a friend who does this, she and her husband. He designs patterns that he sells online with computer and quilt companies. And so I don't recall what pattern we used as the design, but I pay her for the thread and the work that she does, which at that point was $106. And the batting was $20. So you can add those up in your brain, but that doesn't count my time for any of it. So at minimum wage, at 4 or 5 hours a day for 9 days, you can do the math as well. So when people say that make quilts, bigger than these and the cost seems astronomical to you, that is some of the reasons why. And those who are painters know the same thing. They've spent a lot of time, their supplies are expensive, so it's hard to get what you think it's worth, but this one is not for sale. So we don't have to care about it. And you may say, well, how many quilts do you have? I don't know exactly, not counted them, but I do use them every month. I decorate our bed with another quilt. This one has been on the bed for January, and since I knew it was coming down here, I decided I'd put a new one on a couple days early. So that's how I use them. I see them. I want to make things that are practical. So that's what I do. Thank you.
About the quilting and how it's done. And so I really appreciate you going into that detail. Okay. Bobby Thompson's going to come up here and visit with us a little bit now and tell us about this wonderful painting that he has. I love it. I love it.
Okay, I'll tell you how this one came about. I worked on a painting for about 3 months, 3 different canvases. I could never get the perspective right to what I wanted. So one day I just put all that aside, got this big canvas here, which incidentally now belongs to Helen. When they were dispersing with their things, I took this. So this canvas was the ballerina girls, and so I found a painting to go with it. But so this, I painted on this about 3 days. I mean, that's like 30 minutes each day, and it really was rewarding. I know it's simple, but it sure was better than what I was doing with the other one. But we have the Northern Lights here, and the mother penguin feeding the little one, or there's nothing there. She must have already eaten. Okay, that's all I have.
And now, Walter, I will tell you, and most of you that come to this art show know that Walter has not painted before he came here. Now, he's a draftsman. I mean, he understands drawing and draftsmanship, that type of thing. But as far as painting, he has not. And I want you to see, it is just beautiful what he's done. And old Don Miners, he gave us a little art class on perspective. And look how that fence goes into the vanishing point. And you just, and your shadows, come on up here. You've done such a good job. Whoopee. That's Terry.
Well. I was looking for something to paint, and my friend Bill Crosby, you in here, Bill?
Yeah, Bill.
Oh, you're way over there. Anyhow, Bill had some photographs, so he let me borrow one. And this was just a country screen scene with a dirt road. I can't talk today. A dirt road, a pasture with a barbed wire fencing it in, and a little barn in the background. Anyhow, I thought it was very pretty, so I thought I'd get it from Bill before we messed it up. You're right, Bill. I don't really have a lot to say about the painting. I enjoy doing it. And if you want to know anything, I'm not from the country. I was born and raised in a little small town in Mississippi. But I do know a lot about the country because I started hunting and fishing when I was 9 years old, or 8 years old. And I spent a lot of time out on country roads and everything. There's one thing I didn't put in here, and I didn't put a mud puddle in that dirt road. But if any of y'all are ever out in the country and you get stuck in a mud puddle, you're in a lot of trouble. I can tell you because I've been there and done that, and you don't want to do it. I did have some of my friends make some comments on the painting, though. One of my girlfriends told me I should have put a horse in the pasture. Well, another one of my girlfriends told me I should put some cows out there. Well, guys, you know how it is. You just can't ever satisfy these women.
I am very totally satisfied with that painting. It doesn't need a horse. It doesn't need a mud hole in the road. Now we have Carolyn Thomason coming, and Carolyn, I just can't rave enough about Carolyn because she was here before I arrived at Kirby Pines. I've been here 7 years, and if there is ever an encourager or a soft-spoken lover, friend, just precious person, it's Carolyn, and she has certainly brought me through a lot of dark times.
I'm not going to pick it up. I might drop it. It has a story, and the name of my painting is Cups of Love. And I don't know if you know, but my husband's middle name was Love. L-O-V-E.
I'll go this way.
And so I did these with all of them have the word love on them, but I did them in his honor. And he has 3 great granddaughters who also have the middle name of Love. So it's just a different painting, and I just decided to do different kinds of cups.
Group of painters is that we don't always paint the same way. In other words, sometimes we paint birds, but then other times we paint cups of love. Sometimes we paint barns, but we don't all paint the same way or the same thing every time. As you'll see towards the end of the show, I'm going to talk about something that nobody believes that I painted. So, let's see. Oh, we got John Sosh. Come on up, John. Where are you?
Here.
Good.
Well, one day I was thumbing through a magazine, seeing pictures to try to get inspired to do a new painting, and all painters do it at some time in their life, I guess. But I came across this sheet. I said, that is really unusual. I think I'm going to cut it out and do something. Oh, several months went by, and I got another idea. I had some scrap paper left from a previous project, a weaving project. So it started out with just this one. And this is a weaving. When you come up here and look at it, you can feel it. But I thought something was missing. This was in my scrap box of weavings, and I said, So I put that around it, trimmed it up a little bit, and here we go. I don't even remember what I called it. It is called The Awakening. So that's it.
His work, because he always has very interesting titles, and especially that background. I really love that background. I thought that's moves, you know, and I love that about his work. Now we have Marilyn is going to come up here, and I know she doesn't want to do it, but she's going to do it because she's a big girl. She put her big girl pants on today. Hello. Oh, okay. I will start in by saying I want to thank Jerry because she had come over to see some of my paintings, and I love to paint. I love to paint mountains and what have you. And she said, pick out a painting that you would like, and it was hard for me. But if there was anything I wanted to share with all of you, it was the paintings I did of what I call my babies. They're paintings of babies of friends, and we'll start with this, but I'm going to start off with the only one that remains with me because the baby pictures aren't with me. I gave the original to the mother, so I just had scans of that. But this one that, okay. The one off to the left there was painting. Believe it or not, I like to paint as much as I love to play the piano. And since very, very little, living in Wyoming at about the age of 9 or 10, in a place called Cody, Wyoming. It was a hometown of Buffalo Bill. And my father being a minister, he would sometimes during the week visit a community that used to be called a reservation. They no longer called it a reservation, but the people didn't move away. That was their home, so it still remained. And when he did that, sometimes I would go with him, and I would just play with the kids my age there. Or sometimes I would take my sketch pad and just sketch them. So this was one of the first, the Little Indian Gal was the first one I did at that time. I was age 10 at that point. And I really have to say that I felt guilty because I didn't know anything about art. And I did the face part in chalk, in pastels. Now, the Indians of this community never wore the blankets or anything unless there was a parade or the 4th of July. So then I added that, but I did it in oil, and I always felt ashamed because I didn't think that was permitted, that was right to put those two together, and now I realize you can. So that takes care of that one. I have the other slides, and I'm not going to be speaking about them a lot. Okay. The other one was that was the last one I did just a couple weeks ago. For my friend, many of you met her. They were from Texas, and the little blonde had a grandson, and that was him. That was him. Okay. These were two that I did for another friend. I started this because when Pat and I were first married, we had absolutely no money. And it was tough to buy presents for everybody for their weddings and things. So when one of my friends would become pregnant for a shower, I went and had a card, and I just simply said, when your baby gets so cute you can't stand it, take a picture and I'll paint it for you. That will be my gift to you. And she loved it.
So then I had the next person who became pregnant started staring at me and saying, am I going to get mine? So it started the whole ball game going. The other one was a friend that they went to, they adopted a child from China. The one on the left is the very first one that I ever did. And then the other one was another friend of, she had her baby, and I know all of them. Yeah, they're cute. I fell in love with them, but I was always scared because the mother knows every inch of her baby, and I had never met the babies themselves. The one on the right was, I taught at Vassar, and one of my colleagues, he also taught languages, and that was his daughter there. Off to the left is my friend in Spain. She knows no English, and she had her first grandchild, and I painted her. The one in the middle we've seen. The one off to the right was a friend who had twins. This is one of the twins that she had. Yeah. Strangely, off to the far left, my other friend that was here from Texas, her daughter had her first child, and I told her, have her pick out what baby picture was, and she gave me a picture like this, and I didn't get it. You couldn't even see his face. Then when I got to painting it, I realized what she said of him looking out into the world and discovering it, and I thought that was a sweet thing. The one in the middle is, again, my friend in Spain, Maria Teresa, and that was her daughter's child. And she had said that if ever there was she took a picture and she said, Mom, if I never take another picture, this is the picture I love. So I used that one. And off to the right, a very good friend of mine, actually the wife of the president of Vassar, we became very good friends, and that was her daughter. Painted her with her favorite toy. And I think that's it.
That's it. And next we have another. Last time he had to put 4 on one canvas so that he could get all the paintings he's doing, you know. Yes, he did. Anyway, he just is just becoming a real beautiful artist, and I love this painting because he has a story behind it.
I really didn't want to show this, but Jerry insisted. There's a little story behind it about just 2 or 3 weeks ago. Well, it's been about a month ago. A friend of ours, one of my best friends, Marilyn's, died. And the funeral was going to be a couple of days after this took place. And I was going south on Kirby Parkway, and I looked up. Fortunately, they keep a rear red house. In case you can't tell, there are stoplights. You can't see it here, but.
Put the microphone at your mouth, okay?
Yes, ma'am. That's the way she talks to me all the time. Anyway, the stoplights, of course, I stopped. And for what reason, I didn't figure out until later. I decided to take a picture of it. You don't have a lot of time to take a picture of a stoplight. So I got it in there. And then later on, I developed a picture, and I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. But first of all, you see the dark clouds above and below, which kind of showed how I was feeling that day. And then later when I saw the picture, I said, those stoplights stopped me for a reason. And the white clouds kind of opened my eyes, and you know, there is light ahead. And so, anyway, there you go.
I felt we needed to hear that because we do go through sadness here, and sometimes the traffic lights make you stop and think about where you are and what you're thinking about, and I just really appreciate, Bill, you doing that for us and sharing the story. Okay, who do we have next? I think we have Laura, and do we have, wait a minute, who is it? No, yes, Laura. Leora. My mother's name was Laura, and I get Laura and Leora confused. There we go. This is fascinating what she's going to tell you.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Jerry for letting me be in the show, because this is a little different than the other art. Last year, I went to my daughter's house to take care of my grandchildren. My daughter's family is really heavy into Legos. They have Legos everywhere. The kids, the adults, everybody builds Legos. So she asked me if I wanted to help with one. It was a little piece, just a little donkey. It was part of a piñata, you know, like the Mexican celebrations. Anyway, the way you put Legos together is simply by pictures. There are no words. So it'll show you the blocks you need to use, how you put them together, and then you go through it. Well, I found that a little confusing. And of course she knew how to do it all right. There she has it. The other thing was just the tiny pieces. So I decided when I got back home that I needed to practice. I needed to practice dexterity, and I needed to practice mental interpretation of pictures. So I started with flowers, and my first flowers were very, very, very simple. And I graduated to mini flowers, which are these. This is a chrysanthemum, a mini orchid, and a plum blossom. Now, Lego has a whole book on how they interpret flowers. They'll show you the picture of the actual flower, and then how they decided to use the pieces to represent it. And if you look closely at some of them, like these aren't as representative, but they're not exactly what the flower looks like, but you're close enough that you know what it is. They fall apart very easily. So, in fact, I brought them, and I was going to water aerobics, and I asked Kim if I could set them on her desk so that they would be safe. Well, while we were in the pool, she comes into the room and said, "Oh, Lee, please," you know. She had got a bug had landed on her hand as she went like that, and the chrysanthemum ended up in pieces all over the oasis. So we put it back together, and it still looks like a chrysanthemum. So what I would recommend is when you come up and look at them, just look at how the pieces represent the flower. I'm hoping that I can bring other Legos to other shows so you can see some of the other things that they do. But again, I'm staying with flowers for the most part because that's easier for people to understand.
Who always says, "Put the microphone up, put the microphone up." So put the microphone up, go for it.
Good afternoon. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you came to see all the good things and the bad things. But this is Jack in jail. Now, you might not know which one's Jack or which one's jail, but it really doesn't matter. You know the old saying, Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. I don't think they went up for water. You know how rabbits multiply really, really fast. Anyway, this is the rabbits, and I painted them in class with oil, and I thought this frame was going to be wonderful, but I don't like it. But sometimes I think it's going to look better, but it doesn't. It doesn't do anything for that picture, but I'll fix it. I didn't ever fix the last one yet, but I'm going to fix it too. Thank you.
has given us some lessons. In fact, he's all set up, and I forget when you're starting, but he's going to give us some lessons and invite anybody to come that would love to. Thank you, Don.
If you could switch over to the picture itself. Since I've been here, my granddaughters, Pat and I have two granddaughters. One is married and lives in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The other is not married and lives in Chattanooga. And I've already got several orders in for a painting. And sometimes they just tell me to paint what I want, and sometimes they send me pictures, which is harder to do for an artist to try to paint something that somebody else wants. But our granddaughter in Philadelphia has been married a little over a year now, and she and her husband John had been to this location, and it's in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. They sent me about 4 pictures, and I picked out one that had a lot of color in it. I thought it would be a beautiful painting, but no, they wanted this particular one. And the reason is that they were up there on a trip, and Hannah was walking down this little trail, and John and a buddy of his had hidden behind the log cabin and popped out with a picnic basket and went over under a tree and proposed. So after, it's a challenging one. Look at all the shadows in it. There's a tree off to the left, and it's the first time I've ever had to paint that many shadows in one painting. So it's got a lot of complications to it, but it's what they wanted, and I have sent them a picture of it, and they liked it. But here's the interesting part. I always name my paintings, and I write on the back of them what they are. And so last week we were in the lunchroom, and I was trying to figure out, Pat knew the story, and I said, what in the world should we name this one? And that day on the menu was Marry Me Chicken.
That's good.
Pat said, I love that. Why don't we name it Marry Me? So I said, that's a good idea. Why don't you check with them and see if they liked it? They liked it. So this will go in John's office, and I'm sure it'll bring back memories every time they look at it. I don't know, I'm going to have to ship it to them because they live a long way off and they don't get here very often. But anyhow, I enjoyed painting it.
The least bit interested in painting, to come to the show, come to his art class on Wednesday morning.
The only requirement for you to be there is if you cannot draw a straight line.
Good.
Every time we talk to somebody about, why don't you paint? Oh, I cannot draw a straight line. We very seldom draw straight lines when we paint. So I think we've got about 6 or 8 all lined up, and it's very, very fundamental, and we just give you enough information that if you have an interest to keep going any farther, then you can do it. If you don't ever have to do it, but it's only an hour once a week for 4 weeks.
Thank you. Did I see Joe Ballard come in? I can't find him in our group, and I don't think that they're here. Maybe, I think they're out of town, come to think of it. Anyway, this is Joe's painting. Joe and his wife are fairly new here, but he does beautiful watercolor work, just beautiful. And so maybe we can get both of our watercolorists to get together and give us some lessons. I would like to have some lessons. Now the next one is going to be me, and I'm going to, don't get off of that first, and I forget what the face looks like, but look at the shirt. I need to get my ducks in a row. Well, I think we probably all at times need to get our ducks in the row. But I tell you, when I was 18 and married a preacher, I needed to get my ducks in a row. And I found that I couldn't get my ducks in a row. And because I could not get my ducks in a row, I began to experience extreme low self-esteem. Anybody in here ever feel less than, low self-esteem? Okay, well, bless you. I'm glad to hear that none of you have experienced what I experienced, which was I compared myself to others more talented. Like today, back in the day, I would be intimidated rather than celebrating Marilyn. I mean, she is fantastic, okay? I'm good. I'm not saying I'm not good, but I'm not so fantastic, you know what I mean? And so back in the day, I compared myself with other painters. I didn't complete college. I hardly got in the front door, y'all, and I was right out the back, because when a preacher asks you to marry him, you say yes. Especially if it's Maxie Gunner. He was wonderful, wonderful. We've been married 67 years, and every year has been special. But back in the day, like I say, I had a lot of low self-esteem feelings, and especially if we would get with the young families and they would say, "Oh, where did you go to college?" "Oh, no, I didn't go to college." And they'd say, "Well, what sorority were you in?" "Sorority? What's that?" You know? I mean, I was beginning to be hit right and left with things that made me feel less than, made me feel that I was not worthwhile. And I guess the reason, basically, is when I became a Christian, I was quite young. Of course, I married at 18, that's pretty young, isn't it? But about 10 years before, when I was 8, and I was baptized, I kind of went to sleep. In fact, there was an illustration Maxie said once, I said that was me, that this child fell out of bed, and Mama went to get her, and she was crying, and she said, "What happened?" And the little girl said, "I guess I went to sleep too close to where I got in." Okay, well, I kind of went to sleep too close to where I got in my faith. Does that make sense to anybody here? I hope so, because I think there are a lot of us that may have kind of gone to sleep, perhaps in our earlier years, and then let our faith really bring us out. And when I began to grow in Christ, I began to accept myself as a child of God. So, Marilyn's a child of God, I'm a child of God, Kayla is, y'all all are. So we don't have to compare ourselves, because God loves us all. He loves us all. Therefore, my self-esteem began to grow. Now, at that time, Maxie wrote a book, or around that time, he wrote a book, Dancing at My Funeral. Anybody ever hear of such a crazy name? Dancing at My Funeral? What is he talking about? Well, Maxie, too, had feelings of low self-esteem, because he grew up in the country, buried in cotton, and they didn't have water running in the house. Just a hard time. Mama and Daddy had a great garden. They never went hungry. Until he went to college, he didn't know he didn't have the best life in the whole wide world. But he got there, and sort of like me, he began to have this, I don't want anybody to know that I didn't have running water when I was growing up. I don't want anybody to know how poor we were, although they never knew they were poor, and they had a big, happy family. So, as he grew out of that himself, he wrote this book, Dancing at My Funeral. And why? Because he had to bury the feelings that he had about his life that didn't measure up, okay? And look at me. I had to bury those feelings that I had about myself. When we discovered God's love, God's precious love for each one of us, then we could bury those feelings. Don't forget them. They existed. But then we could rise up and dance. Well, an interesting thing about this painting that is what I'm illustrating there. I'm dancing at my own funeral. I have buried those things. While they existed, they don't control me now. And so this is dancing at my funeral. When Maxie wrote this, a couple in Hollywood, came to visit us in Anaheim and brought the book. Now back in the day, I don't know if people do it now, but I have always stood by Maxie and smiled as the people would come through and shake hands with us. That was just kind of what I did. Anyway, so I was standing there in line, smiling up a storm, and Maxie was shaking hands, and all of a sudden this couple we didn't know at all comes through, and he's holding the book. Well, Maxie naturally went for the book. Well, guess what? She says, yes, we want you to autograph the book, but we're here because we want to talk to your wife. What? Hello? I mean, nobody had ever come through the line wanting to talk to me, really. And so we want to know why. And the reason is that she had read this, and she wanted, get this, a woven rug to illustrate dancing at my funeral. I said, I don't do woven rugs. Yes, you can do this. And I said, well, I can commission somebody to do it. They wanted my design, so they commissioned me to do this rug. Well, I wanted them to select my drawing, and so I painted this because I thought, gosh, they'll just say they want the painting. Nah, they didn't want the painting. They wanted a rug with this design on it. And I commissioned someone, and they did it. We both got paid well for doing it. And I got to keep the painting. Because basically that painting, it's not in this book. I illustrated the book, but it's not in this book, but the meaning is in the book. And the meaning there is that we are dancing. We're dancing before the Lord. We're praising God. We are okay because we know that we are children of God, and He loves each and every one of us. Amen? You're clapping because God loves each one of us, and no matter what in our history, what in our past, we might feel, wish I hadn't done that. You can bury that. You can bury that and dance at your own funeral. Amen? All right, we're going to have another art show. It's coming up. I don't have the date on it right now, but it is coming up, and it is wonderful. And Kayla's going to come here and share something.
Mr. Huffnagel, where are you? I know you're here somewhere. Live TV is not working. Just so there you are. The live TV channels do not work right now, and they will hopefully be working again on Monday. So I'm letting everybody know now. We have a new performer tonight, Graham Winchester, so you can't watch him on TV, so you have to come here to the PAC to support him. And that's all I have. Please enjoy the spread in the back and give a big round of applause to all of our amazing artists that we have. Thank you so much.